2, 1, 2. Good. 1, 2, 1, 2. We're on. We're in. There we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. Alright. Hey everybody, welcome to Politics, Culture, and some other shit. I've got a Wednesday evening to do nothing, so I decided I would come and share it with you and do a live stream. And the reason that I was coming to do the live stream was because, as you know, can I ask you to like, share and subscribe, please? If you're going to, I know I'm supposed to do all this stuff all the time, but I always forget. Can you hit the like button and share it on Twitter, on the Facebooks, and on the whatevers? And yeah, it really helps. And then if you want to, you can support me over in the Patreon. It's only £3 a month. That's it. One tier, baby. One tier. It's far too complicated any other way, and I'm too much of a lefty. I would just end up giving everybody everything anyway. So that was never going to work for me. So anyway, so the point of this podcast was, I was much like, I mean, if you're a fucking lefty like me, which I'm sure you are, I'm sure you're kind of you've sort of been a bit inspired by a character called Mick Lynch, who I'd never heard of. Now, the run-up, as we know, the RMT are on strike, which is Rail and Maritime Transport Workers Union, is that it? Rail Maritime. So they've gone on strike 3 days this week. I'm going to read the statement from the RMT as to why they've gone on strike. It's very important, you know. So this, I don't read or I don't watch the news or anything like that. I can't be fucking bothered. It's just too depressing, and it's everybody on it is clearly working for Tory central office and the deep state. And I heard a great phrase, another alternative about the history of the deep state, air quotes, and it was originally a phrase. It was originally referenced in the 70s, I think it was, the 60s, by a leftist writer, and he called it the dual state. And then that sort of turned around and became the deep state. And I prefer the term the dual state myself. I think it's a bit better. So I don't watch the news because I just get depressed and shit, and everybody is clearly working for the dual state. That's my new thing. Yeah, so what was it? So yeah, I don't watch it. So this guy came up on my Twitter feed. I get all my news from YouTube and Twitter and online sources and all the rest of it. I read a few publications and articles and what have you. And yeah, so this guy, I was just much like you, completely taken with him. We want him to be the leader of everything now. He has to be the leader of the country, surely. You know, this is the sort of guy that I genuinely do wish that Jeremy Corbyn had this guy's balls. Jeremy was far too nice, but this guy's just gonna fuck you. And we get all too rare a moment to shine in the fucking bask in the glory of the moon, the glory of sunlight. All too rare being leftists, and then this guy pops up, Mick Lynch. And so I said, fuck it, I'm going to do a podcast. I was going to do it on Friday night. That was my original intention. But then tonight opened up for me. So I went, fuck it, I'm going to do this. So we're going to watch loads of Mick eviscerating people. And by the way, I know that I spelled eviscerating wrong in my title card. I'll flash it up there. There's a C after the S. So I spelled that wrong. Apologies for that. I am terrible for that. I would need a full-time editor following me about correcting my spellies. Yeah, so I just thought I'm going to have to do this. So I've downloaded all the videos. A couple of articles I'm going to read for you. The first one of which is going to be the statement from the RMT explaining exactly what it is, what it is they're going to strike for. So, okay, so let's do this. We're going to hit this straight away. We may as well. Demo, straight on. Hiya, Demo man. I got the video you sent me. Thank you very much. I have downloaded it and I'm going to play it. Demo, RMT union leader, is the best Mick since Crocodile Dundee. Ha ha! Brilliant. That's a good one. I like it, my friend. I like it. So yeah. So there's a few of you there in the YouTubes. I keep getting these fucking warnings that my current bit rate is lower than the I don't know what that is all about. I have a fucking... If this drops in and out, let me know, will you? It'll be available as a podcast during the week, but it's good to do this live. Yeah, appreciate it. So let's do this. So the first article I'm going to read is... I'll throw it up on the old screeny post there. Let's see where I was. National... There we go. So that's me. I'm reading that for you now. This is what I'm reading in real life. This is from the RMT union page. Yeah. So here we go. Let's see if I make that a little bit bigger for you. Oh, I've that much stuff on the screen. There we go. That's better. Bear with me. There we go. Just if you want to read along, you can. Yeah. So National Rail and London Underground strikes. This is from the RMT website. This is explaining what all the fuss is. Discussions with Network Rail and the train operators have continued today. This is today, 22nd of June. The train operators have now made an offer, and there is no further offer from Network Rail. Because, as you know, there were two. Whenever the railways were privatised, they split everything up, didn't they? So the one organisation, one company ran the trains, and another company ran the lines and stuff. So it's all very complicated. So whenever you're negotiating with these people for a pay raise, you've got to negotiate with the people that run the trains, the people that own the lines, and then the government as well. And we'll get into that as well. So the RMT National Executive Committee has now found both sets of proposals to be unacceptable and now confirmed that the strike action scheduled this week will go ahead. It is clear that the Tory government, after slashing $4 billion of funding from the National Rail and Transport for London, has now actively prevented a settlement to this dispute. Why is my wee... sorry, bear with me. 1, 2... 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, sorry. I know what's happened. Bear with me. My little spectralizer that lets you know that I'm talking, which I like to have because it lets you know the video's live. Alright. So it's 1, 2. There we go. Sorry about that. That was a complete distraction for me. The rail companies have now proposed pay rates that are massively under the relevant rates of inflation, coming on top of the pay freezes of the past few years. At the behest of the government, companies are also seeking to implement thousands of job cuts and have failed to give any guarantee against compulsory redundancies. As a result of this transport austerity, the employing companies have taken the decisions to attack the Railway Pension Scheme and the TfL scheme, diluting benefits, making staff work longer and making them poorer in retirement while paying increased contributions. So that's fucking not on. So you got to pay more to get less. Cut thousands of jobs across the rail network while not giving a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies. Cutting safety inspections on the infrastructure by 50% in order to facilitate mass redundancies. That's so. How can you go to a fucking union and expect them to agree to this? Cutting safety inspections on the infrastructure by 50% in order to facilitate mass redundancies, and this is the government that oversaw Grenfell. I still haven't done anything about that, by the way. And they're looking to reduce safety inspections. Attack terms, conditions and working practices in a form of internal fire and rehire, including lowering existing salaries and increasing the working week. Now come on. Restarting the disputes on the role and responsibility of the guard and massive cuts to catering services. Closing every ticket office in Britain, regardless of the accessibility needs of the diversity of passengers. And cutting real pay for most of our members through lengthy pay freezes and well below RPI inflation pay proposals. Wow. And they're going on strike, you say? Quell fucking surprise. Faced with such an aggressive agenda of cuts to jobs, conditions, pay and pensions, RMT has no choice but to defend our members industrially to stop this race to the bottom. The strikes on Network Rail, the train operators and London Underground will go ahead. We again call on our members to stand firm, support the action, mount the pickets and demonstrate their willingness to fight for workplace justice. The RMT supports the campaign for a square deal for all working people in the face of the cost of living crisis, and our current campaign is a part of that more general campaign, which means that public services have to be properly funded and all workers properly paid with good conditions. RMT remains available for discussions that will settle this dispute and ensure our transport system can operate without disruption. I mean, there's none of that sort of seems outrageous to me, other than this middle part. Attack railway pension scheme and all, you know, what the employers have decided to do. And we know what this is all about, don't we? We know that this is in order to provide what? Profits. That's it. That's all it is. It's just for profits and fucking nothing else. Where do you think the profits come from? So let's get to the videos, because Mick gets to that. And I'm sure, just like me, one of the reasons that you've been so taken with Mick was not only his ability to cut through the waffle and the obfuscation and the nonsense. It was the muscularity with which he was doing it, straight to the point. I mean, he literally cut these people's throats live on the air, and there's no one got out of it, and there's no one got away with it. If you were trying to fuck about with him at all, he just eviscerated you. And it's quite clear when these people go on to your television to talk to you, they clearly have another agenda, and a part of their agenda is to get back on the television, right? Is to push a career. Now, unless Mick is a complete psychopath, these people are not inviting them back if they don't have to. It's not happening, Michael. Sorry, brother. But he clearly has no other intentions or goals other than to represent his workers, and that's exactly. And there was I heard someone what was the phrase? You know, there's this politics in the public discourse of politeness, and you're supposed to sit there and politely watch your livelihood and your life and your everything that we call social mobility, your ability to provide an income to your children, or provide for your income to provide everything you need for your children, your wives and your lives, your husbands, whatever it is. You're supposed to sit there and politely watch that just get stripped away and say nothing. And it's a part of the frustration I feel with the left and with ordinary working people, whether you call yourself a socialist, a leftist or not. There's a lot of common ground with the working class people. no matter what side of the fence they sit on. And a part of the frustration for me is that whenever I'm sitting watching these so-called, I will watch questions. I saw Sarah O'Neill there, our friend up in the North Coast. She put up, I retweeted it, that Mick Lynch is going to be on Question Time tomorrow night. Now, I'm going to watch Question Time. I threatened to watch it a few weeks ago when it was coming from Belfast, and I couldn't fucking do it because it's just frustrating. I'm watching this one because some motherfucker's going to get the fucking asses kicked. And it's not for the sake of... I'm not getting a kick out of it for some sort of... I'm not getting some sort of underhanded pleasure out of it. I'm not a masochist or anything. It needs said. People like Mick need to be on the airwaves, holding these people's feet to the fire, and they're trying to do it to him. They're trying to make him out to be all sorts of horrible things, and he's just calling everybody out. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody, and it's about fucking time. So let's get to the first video here. So I've got so many of them, I don't know. Let's go with a... Okay. Yeah. We'll go with a Kay Burley one. I know you probably know this. So Kay Burley was trying to get Mick to make out as though the strike was going to turn violent. Wasn't she? I'm sure you've seen this. Let's do it.
The government is saying that they are going to bring in agency workers. My question to you is, I'm guessing that some of your members will still stay on the picket lines. What will they do if agency workers try to cross those picket lines?
Well, we will picket them. What do you think we'll do? We run a picket line and we'll ask them not to go to work. Do you not know how a picket line works?
What if they do anyway? I very much know how a picket line works. I'm much older than I look, Mr. Lynch. What will picketing involve?
Well, you can see what picketing involves. I can't believe this line of questioning. Picketing is standing outside the workplace to try and encourage people who want to go to work not to go to work. What else do you think it involves?
And what if they want... Well, I just wondered what else it might involve, because I very well remember the picket lines of the 1980s,
where are you going with your...
Mr. Lynch. I'm asking you what your members would do, Mr. Lynch.
Which picket lines are you talking about?
The miners' strikes. Miners' strike.
Yeah. Well, does it look like the miners' strike? What are you talking about?
No, it doesn't, Mr. Lynch, and I'm just asking, I'm just to clarify.
Seems to have gone off into the world of the surreal.
No, Mr. Lynch, and I'm sorry if you feel the need to ridicule me, but I'm just asking you what you expect your members to do.
But your questions
if agency workers
verging into the nonsense.
I'm asking
you. Picket as effectively as we can.
And what does that involve?
Look, there it is. That's what it involves.
So you won't stop agency workers crossing the picket line?
We will try to stop agency workers crossing the picket line by asking them not to go to work. What is it you're suggesting we will do?
I'm just asking you. I'm trying to clarify for the benefit of the British public who are being stopped from travelling around the country, Mr. Lynch. I'm just trying to clarify exactly what your members will do. Ask politely. Thank you for...
I'm replying to you politely.
To answer the question.
Okay,
Mr. Lynch.
I've answered the question about 6 times. If there are people trying to cross the picket line, we ask them not to cross it.
I'm asking questions on behalf of my viewers this morning, Mr. Lynch. I'm very sorry if you find it offensive. The government...
So, there we go. Kay Burley. As Damo points out here on the YouTube, Mick straight talking and calling out lies and nonsense rather than engaging in plainly false narratives definitely struck a chord with so many people. And isn't that just exactly it? That is exactly it in a fucking nutshell. He goes on to say, Kay Burley completely flustered and trying to say that an unflappable Mick was flustered, which was really fucking weird because she tweeted that out. That went out on her Twitter, on the Sky News Twitter account, a flustered Mick Lynch. It was clearly wasn't flustered. It wasn't him. And she goes on, when what she was talking about there in that video was if agency workers come in, are they going to try and stop? And she was referencing the miners' strike. Now, let's not forget the miners' strike was an attack on the working people, the miners. It was an attack on the miners. It wasn't the other way about. So she was trying to invoke that horrible era in which those miners got their fucking skulls beat in, trying to protect their jobs and their families, and an entire industry. Now, it was such a low blow, and it was so and you could see that Mick was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He said, "Shut up, stupid woman." And it was a he didn't say that, obviously. You heard what he said, but it was like you're just, and as Damo points out, rather than engaging in plainly false narratives. Now, she was talking about agency workers coming in, and I heard another interview I read an article. I'm not going to read. I don't think I have it up tonight, but Mick was saying that agency workers and staff can't come in and do the work of the railway workers, because a lot of the work that the railway workers do is very, very dangerous and important. There's a lot of training goes into these jobs. You can't just walk on and start driving a fucking train, right? So, the agency staff, if they do come in, some of the management have had minimal training to cover some things, but they're not going to be able to do this. This is why this strike is such a good move, because, and it's one of the reasons. I do feel so sorry for hospital staff and firefighters and things like that, medical people. They can't really go on a full strike, because the people's lives will be put in danger, and they have to go on a strike, but they have to sort of cover themselves just a little bit. These guys don't have to do that, and that's the way to do it. Thank God. No, fuck it, we're shutting it down, and you're not going to be able to run this service without us. Now, we'll get into the finances in a minute, so let's have another Mick video, because these are really good. I'm really enjoying them. So I've got one down here, short one. Sophie Ridge. He was on Sophie Ridge. Let's check it out.
Let's not forget, during that period, these train operating companies and the rolling stock leasing companies and the subcontractors made £500 million of profit in the worst year for rail revenue. So what Grant Shapps is actually doing is subsidising private sector profit, dividends and shares. Two of the companies that I'm dealing with in this dispute, First Group and Go Ahead, are subject to takeover bids of billions of pounds. They're really attractive to private sector investors, and they want to take them over because they know that there's going to be profit, even while the railway is subsidised. And it's not actually true that they're being subsidised to that level. Before COVID, they were subsidised by 6.4 billion. And then in the COVID period, they had to add to that to keep it open because there was no revenue. And what these train operating companies said was, if you don't give us money for the emergency measures, we're going to give you the keys back so that the state can run the railway. And that would have been a more efficient way to run it, actually, because that would have saved £500 million of profit that's going out to these companies. Let's not forget.
Sorry, I'm going to play that one again. That's worth listening to. Listen to exactly what it is that Mick's saying. Especially when it comes to the profits. He's saying we'd be better off if we ran it and not these companies, because we can put the 500 million back into the railway line. They can actually put a lot of money into the exchequer as well. But let's go with this. Go again.
Let's not forget, during that period, these train operating companies and the rolling stock leasing companies and the subcontractors made £500 million of profit in the worst year for rail revenue. So what Grant Shapps is actually doing is subsidising private sector profit, dividends and shares. Two of the companies that I'm dealing with in this dispute, First Group and Go Ahead, are subject to takeover bids of billions of pounds. They're really attractive to private sector investors, and they want to take them over because they know that there's going to be profit, even while the railway is subsidised. And it's not actually true that they're being subsidised to that level. Before COVID, they were subsidised by 6.4 billion.
And then in the COVID period, they had to add to that to keep it open because there was no revenue. And what these train operating companies said was, if you don't give us money for the emergency measures, we are going to give you the keys back so that the state can run the railway. And that would have been a more efficient way to run it, actually, because that would have saved £500 million of profit that's going out to these companies.
And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what it's all about? Where do these companies get their... Why do they want to run these businesses? Because they're fucking making a goddamn fortune. Simple as that. So, I've got another article here for you. Bear with me. I'm just going to try and do a thing. There we go. Just make it a bit bigger. So, if you want to read, you can read. If you don't want to read, I'll read it for you. Such is my want. So, this is an article. A part of the narrative that's going on at the minute is these guys are asking for a pay raise during the cost of living crisis, right? Now, if there wasn't a cost of living crisis, fuck knows what else it would be. It'd be all sorts of things. It could be anything, right? It could be the next thing. You know, you can't have a cost of living crisis. There's a war in Ukraine, or you can't have go on strike. There's a war in Ukraine. So that was put out today. Vladimir Putin's loving this. Like, fuck off. So, here's an article I found on Duck Soap, which is a blog. So it's very good. Tory cost of living crisis. I'll read this out for you. The cost of living crisis is exploitative capitalists stealing money. And this is where we're getting to with all of this. This is my whole point with this. The narrative that the cost of living crisis has anything to do with workers asking for extra pay to cover the rise in prices or inflationary reasons. It's going to be explained in this article to you why that's all bullshit. So, capitalists, particularly the owners of supply of necessities, exploit as much as they are able or allowed to. They accept no boundaries to their wealth grabbing. Food, fuel, housing, transport, and healthcare are necessary. It is not an option to avoid them. Their producers and suppliers can guarantee whatever riches they desire for themselves if no restrictions or control are applied by laws, regulations, and rules. Ownership of vital services attracts the worst capitalist exploiters. Most are offshore businesses that exist in a detached world that perceive humanity as a source of wealth and nothing more. The cost of necessary services and products, and by the way, just on that, I'll roll that back. Food, fuel, housing, transport, and healthcare are necessary, and as socialists, we believe that they should be provided by the state. This does not mean that there isn't a marketplace. This doesn't mean you can't buy and sell stuff. It means you can't buy and sell each other. The cost of necessary services and products to the user is much greater than actual cost. It is not anomalous that businesses' profits increase when their products and services become more expensive. They are the same actions. 50% rises for domestic electricity and gas in April 22 coincided with profit increases for fuel suppliers because the latter required the farmer. So, he said, you know, it's like we can't see that these companies' profits that they post up on their on the stock markets, and we can't see that it directly coincides with them putting their fucking prices up. Like, we're stupid. We are that stupid. I'll read that again. 50% price rises for domestic electricity and gas in April 22 coincided with profit increases for fuel suppliers because the latter required the former. Very neat way of putting it. I like that. The same dual actions are true for food suppliers, corporate owners of homes and transport operators. The UK's cost of living crisis is legalised theft. It is an unrestricted assault on people's lives. Tory government exists to enable cost of living crisis. Tories work for the worst capitalists. That was always true and is why the party exists. But since 2010 election, and more so since the 2019 election, the percentage of Tory government acts, decisions, policies and parliamentary bills that are designed to solely to assist the wealthiest rose sharply toward 100%. Each Queen's speech since 2019 included bills with intent either to directly enhance wealth of the wealthiest or to deny opposition to wealth grabbing, as has every action taken by government ministers in all their rhetoric. For anything the Tory government can affect, it will find a way to funnel cash into the troughs of the wealth grabbers. Privatisation of public services was constructed by Tories to provide endless unearned income for exploiters. Recent devastating price rises for electricity and gas could have been blocked by the government via the use of existing rules and regulations on privatised services. The government chose to not stop the price gouging, and it acted as PR for fuel suppliers by stating lies about the wholesale cost of fuel, gas, for suppliers as a reason for its price rises. Similar actions or lack of actions by Tories is applied to cost of homes, cost of transport, cost of groceries and cost of healthcare. This is the whole point, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't kind of understand, is that the Tories can affect these price rises. They have within already existing legislation the mechanics to do things about these price rises, which are going to be they're catastrophic for some people, but they choose not to. This is the point. It's not an accident. They choose to not do these things. And people need to understand that. This is a choice. It's not magic. It's not God that's doing this. It's Tories. Right, back to the article. Accusations of exactly as I said. Accusations of incompetence or not caring are always valid descriptions of Tory government, but its actions against the public are intentional and planned. There we go. It works for the exploiters and works as an exploiter. There is no delineation between price gouging businesses, government, biased media and libertarian think tanks. Politicians own or have shares in exploitative businesses, and they are the members of or created think tanks. Think tank members' contributions occupy a high percentage of news media airtime and column inches, and they are in advisory roles for government ministers. Business donors to the Tory party receive peerages to be allowed to vote in the House of Lords. Every facet of the cost of living crisis, with no exceptions, is a direct and deliberate consequence of Tory policy. It is the reason the Tory party exists. Okay, so the guy's talking about think tanks. The important thing you have to remember about think tanks, if you got your media, if you're in a state of media capture, which we are, say a producer is looking to an editor, they decided that they're going to focus on this issue or that issue for their 10 o'clock news slot on BBC Two, right? A think tank will have someone ready to go. I watched a video about that. I watched a documentary about this. They'll have someone ready to go 24/7 on their website. You want to talk about this? But they won't make it clear that they're coming from a right-wing position. They'll make it out that they're kind of we're just presenting the facts. It's not our opinion, but it very much is their opinion. Now, the hard-pushed news producer, and I'm being generous by saying that, will say, okay, phone this guy and get him in, because to go and find, as the guy put it in the video, to go and find some academic professor who doesn't know how a fucking webcam works is going to be who is all over this and knows more and can give you a more unbiased and honest summation of the issue, whatever it may be, or you just phone the guy from the think tank and he's going to come in no matter what. He's going to drop everything and he's going to turn up. He's going to be there. So this is one of the reasons. So this is what he's talking about the think tanks in the media. So onwards, paragraph called External Events Used as Excuses. Here we go. The government, the exploiting businesses and their spokespersons at think tanks and the media outlets will point to any supposedly uncontrollable external event to justify spuriously price rises for vital services and goods. COVID-19 pandemic is used as a full cause of price increases and as a reason to impose more austerity. Businesses claim staff shortages and supply problems force them to raise prices. They also cite knock-on effects of COVID as a reason for staff cuts. While making these pleas, their profits expand and their owners and their senior staff enjoy enhanced wealth. Businesses were handed money by the government via furlough, supposedly for loss of profits due to lockdown restrictions. Most of this cash disappeared into offshore accounts. A business owned by the wife of the Chancellor of the Exchequer benefited from a furlough gift. COVID is used to hand billions of pounds to businesses, some created a few days before award of government contract, for alleged pandemic-related services and products. Many Tory MPs and peers and many more of their friends, family members and business associates received multi-million-pound contracts, agreed without scrutiny from the government. Several of the services and products are unusable or never delivered, and we all remember all of that. Russia's invasion of Ukraine provided an opportunity for government to claim more reasons for imposition of a cost of living crisis. Actions taken by UK and other European and NATO countries that governments claim need prices to rise include. So this is some of the excuses, okay? Economic sanctions against Russian-based businesses. These sanctions cause some goods normally imported from Russia to be sourced elsewhere at a possibly higher cost, and Russian businesses close operations in other countries, leading to job losses and price rises due to the shortages of the products. 2. Suspension of operations in Russia of NATO-based businesses. Loss of income and profits in Russia for large internal businesses gives them an excuse for raising prices in other countries. Suspension of purchases of gas from Russia by European countries. Gas imports from elsewhere can be more expensive and suppliers in Europe raise prices, causing knock-on effects for transport costs, food costs, etc. So, let's deal with that. None of the above diminishes profits and executive salaries at large businesses. Both continue to rise exponentially. Economic effects of the war are not an excuse, not a reason for exacerbating the cost of living crisis. European politicians are keen to state repeatedly that price rises will occur due to economic consequences of the war. They work hard to protect profits and reputations of large businesses. Seconds after the first Russian tank rumbled across the border into Ukraine, a chorus erupted from European and NATO countries. Politicians were in they committed their public taxes to feeding the never-satiated greed of the arms industry. These commitments were not just for the immediacy of the conflict, they were for years hence. Weapons poured into Ukraine from NATO states to ensure the war can be prolonged. Funding of arms industry means cuts throughout other government departments, adding further impetus to cost of living crisis. Arms industry and its associated financial industry are drowning in free money. Brexit. On to Brexit as more excuses. Another key opportunity for wealth gatherers and their enablers in government to worsen the cost of living crisis is Brexit. Brexit was devised, designed and later enacted as a tool to concentrate wealth with the concomitant remove. I don't know that word. I've never seen that word before. With the concomitant removal of means of opposition. Let me just try this. See if this is going to work. Okay, Google. Okay, Google. What does the word concomitant mean?
This is the definition of concomitant. Formal. Naturally accompanying or associated.
Oh. Naturally accompanying or associated. Okay. Brexit, right, I'll read it again. Brexit was devised, designed, and later enacted as a tool to concentrate wealth with concomitant removal of means of opposition. See, don't say you don't learn anything on this podcast. The latter is achieved via a raft of parliamentary bills that erase human rights, access to justice and right to protest, and that reduce democracy. The changes to the law are possible because the UK is no longer bound by EU regulations and laws. Wealth concentration also benefits from the abundance of EU law, particularly laws on tax avoidance. And we all know who likes a bit of tax avoidance. Not too many fucking train drivers that I know of. The main use of Brexit by enablers of wealth concentration is to take advantage of its chaos. Brexit was designed to be chaotic, woefully and deliberately underprepared. With a cobbled together and intrinsically contradictory trade deal, Brexit was a massive jolt to the daily flow of goods and money, caused by import-export restrictions and extra costs that led to delays or collapse of small businesses. And isn't that interesting? So, don't you find that the main use, let me say it again, the main use of Brexit by enablers of wealth concentration is to take advantage of its chaos. Brexit was designed to be chaotic, and in that you get an understanding. All the while we're observing Brexit and what's going on with it, and we can't understand why there's no preparations. What's going on? What's going on here? This is fucking suicidal. Because that was the point. That was the design. That's the way they wanted it. So, which explains a whole lot. Explains a whole lot to me. That to me is just, it's very interesting that sentence. So let me just take a little sip. Right. The disaster capitalists hoovered up. Former the Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib, who is now a fucking pain in the arse here in Northern Ireland, now a regular guest on TV news panel shows, described how Brexit fed the parasites. On the 23rd of June 2006, he said any volatility due to Brexit would only be an opportunity for small opportunistic companies such as First Property, Habib's company. A year later, he said the UK's decision to leave the EU, it says there 2006, that must be 2016. A year later, he said the UK's decision to leave the EU has created opportunities on which we as a niche fund manager are well placed to capitalise. He was and remains delighted. And again, to get back to us here in the northern bit of this island, we see him doing the rounds with these fucking useful idiots, the Donaldsons and the Jamie Brysons and Jim Allisters and Kate Hoey's and this is why he's making a fortune. Alongside higher costs for imports, Brexit's engineered consequences include disruption to supply of food due to European citizens leaving various workforces, leading to higher prices for the public, but profits for suppliers increase rather than decline. Inflated prices for food and other household necessities are caused by unfettered profiteering of manufacturers, distributors and vendors. Brexit is both an internal cause of higher prices and simultaneously an excuse. Brexit is a cog in the development of charter cities, bereft of democracy, human rights and justice. Charter cities are the ultimate goal of the libertarian extremists. Therein, corporate ownership of land property is complete, and corporate control of governance is complete. It is a grab of part of the country by exploiters. The architects of Brexit are deeply involved in charter cities. In charter cities, normal life will be a cost of living crisis. Right? This article goes on for quite a bit, so I'm not going to read the rest of it. I'm just going to finish the summary. So it's a fantastic. It's not an article. It's a blog piece, and it's really, really, really fucking good. So the next sections are blame the victims for the cost of living crisis. We can see how that. Costs for food, electricity, gas and housing. Tory's social murder policy. Social murder is a phrase first coined by Engels, I believe. Him and, well, I think it's credited to Karl Marx quite a lot, but I think it's actually Engels' social murder, I believe. I could be wrong. Then the next, it goes on. It talks about newspapers, about the media, Tories pretending to address the cost of living crisis. Johnson and his mob pretend they intend to tackle the cost of living crisis, a crisis they created and helped to operate. Obviously they're not. So I'll just get to, and he goes on. It's a fantastic article. Do you know what? I think I'll maybe part 2 this article, because it is worth me finishing this for you. Yeah. So the final paragraph is, cost of living crisis is not designed to stop or slow down. So this is a warning for us all. The Tory government crossed the Rubicon and then shat in it profusely. Its general behaviour is overwhelmed with dishonesty, contempt for the public, for the law, trickery, perjury, multi-billion pound theft in broad daylight, extreme sociopathy, and dumb arrogance. Qualities infused in them at the most expensive private schools in Britain. Their plans for our future are horrendous. Complete hegemony of corporate ownership of our lives. They intend to achieve this via complete rundown of public services, via a deluge of parliamentary bills that eat away ravenously at access to liberty, freedom, justice and human rights. There is no limit to how far they will go. And I don't think that we can contradict any of that. Do you? It seems to me quite clear that this is, unless they are ousted, you know, we're going to end up in a free market, fucking neoliberal, capitalist fucking hellhole. Well, we're going to end up there, he says, tongue in cheek. So, Tony says to me here, our demo on the YouTube, Mick completely across all of his numbers and history of the rail industry, an expert in his field, and Michael Gove gleefully told the world that Tories had enough of experts. True enough. And Tony Gervin, check the link about how Grant Shapps made his money with a pyramid scheme using another name and then denied it until he was caught. Is that what Mick was talking about when he said about about Grant Shapps using a pseudonym? Interesting. Wow. Grant Shapps had the brass neck to claim Mick refused to speak with the Tories and try to resolve the issues. Mick called this out as a lie. I've got the video, as he had met junior ministers for rail and maritime and the Secretary of State. I'm going to play it now. I'll play it now. Why not? Here we go.
Well, I don't know how bringing an untrained, non-safety critical, inexperienced worker into a dangerous environment like the railway, where there are high-speed trains, there are high-voltage distribution systems, and there are rules and regulations that have the power of statute, how that will help anyone, whether they're a passenger, a worker, a manager, or whatever. I don't see how the use and deployment of students or people who've got no work experience and working for an agency will help anyone to resolve this situation. So as usual, he's just spouting nonsense that's given to him from some policy unit, which doesn't help to resolve the situations that are in front of us. Well, this government, every time they are losing an argument, they threaten to change the law and bring in more draconian measures that suppress the civil rights of people. This law has been in place for decades, that agency workers shouldn't replace legitimately striking workers in a lawful ballot. If he wants to spend his time doing that, that's up to him. There aren't agency workers that can replace our members in safety critical work. They're not going to be able to run 25,000 volt electricity control centres. They're not going to signal high-speed trains. They're not going to be able to maintain rolling stock. They're not going to be able to drive trains. So it's a bit of an irrelevance, really, to the situation that we're facing. Well, I can't predict how long this campaign will go on. We're campaigning. We'll campaign on the streets, in demonstrations, lobbying MPs, and doing the best we can. Industrial action will form a part of that if we don't get a settlement. But our mandate runs for 6 months, and we will renew that mandate through a fresh ballot when we need to later in the year. We're hoping that doesn't happen. We don't want any more strikes. We're convinced we can resolve this dispute this week if we had the necessary goodwill from the other side of the table. So I can't predict how long it will be, but we'll be campaigning for as long as it takes to get a settlement to the issues that are in front of us.
So there we go. Don't think that was a video I had in mind, but I have got let me see this now, see if this comes up. Yeah, so this is the article that Tony was referring to. Grant Shapps admits he had a second job as a millionaire web marketeer whilst an MP. See, I heard Mick Lynch referencing this. As I said, I didn't realise exactly what he meant. To be honest with you, I thought it was because he was a Tory, some sort of a sex scandal. I naturally just went, oh, he must have got caught having a wank in a field or something. What is it? Right, let's have a go at this one then, will I? Grant Shapps, the Tory party chairman, had a second job as a multi-million-dollar web marketeer under the pseudonym Michael Green for at least a year after he first became an MP. It is a suggestion that Shapps has repeatedly denied for 3 years, but The Guardian has discovered a recording from the summer of 2006 in which Conservative MP for Welland Hatfield boasts his products could make listeners a ton of cash by Christmas. And there's a photograph of him, look. And look on his badge. What does it say on his badge? Michael Green. Shapps is Michael Green. Rather than running down his operations, it appears that in 2006, Shapps was expanding the company. On a recording made in the summer of that year, the Tory MP says over the next few months he will be running his mentoring program to hire 10 staff, produce software and create websites that Google prefers, and start selling Stinking Rich 3, the latest tome in a range of self-help guides that claim to make customers wealthy and which sell fantastically well. And he's a Tory MP, you say? I don't fucking believe it. I don't believe it. Wow. I'll just skip on ahead here. I wonder will that video play? No. I don't know if you can hear that in the window. No, probably not. There was a little video there. Yeah, man, this is nuts. So we'll finish up here. Carl Turner, Labour Shadow Secretary General, said it beggars belief that chairman of the Conservative Party went on live radio just 3 weeks ago and stated 3 times that he was not doing business as Michael Green while he was an MP, when new reports on Audio Tonight show quite clearly that he did. It seems that Mr. Shapps' repeated denial, which were not in the heat of the moment but also included a calculated decision to instruct solicitors, were contrary to the facts. He also appears to have threatened legal action on the basis of this. David Cameron must now... Okay, so that was back in Cameron's day. Wow, very cool. Or very not cool. He's a Tory, you say? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Unbelievable. But not really. You know, for a Tory, that's kind of mild. And I think it's going to get worse, isn't it? You know, you think about Priti Patel. You know, she should be in jail. I think she should have went to jail. You know, she was, as far as I was concerned, committing treason. Talking... Well, she was the Foreign Secretary, or was she the Home Secretary? No, she was the Foreign Secretary at the time of Britain. I mean, that's Britain's chief diplomat. That's what that title is. And she was talking to foreign governments without informing her Prime Minister. And the foreign government of being Israel, and we know that they're not exactly lily white in the way that they conduct themselves. Say that. So, thanks for that, Tony. Starmer asked Johnson how many meetings he and Shapps had with the RMT union. When Johnson predictably dodged the question, Starmer revealed they had 0 meetings. Wow. But that's interesting in and of itself. But, I mean, Starmer, what a fucking letdown. Well, they didn't expect much of him, to be fair. But what a fucking asshole. I mean, he's just ridiculous. Completely pointless. So, let's, let me see. Yeah. So, I'm going to blast through I'm not going to read these. It's just more, it sort of ties in with that last article that I was reading you. We're the ones, us working class people, are the ones that are bearing the brunt of the cost of living crisis. Meanwhile, the rich get richer. So what is that? What are the figures on that? And this is The Guardian. The world's billionaires did extremely well during the coronavirus pandemic, growing their already huge fortunes to a record high of $10 trillion. A report by Swiss bank UBS found the billionaires increased their wealth by more than a quarter, 27.5% at the height of the crisis from April to July, just as millions of people around the world lost their jobs or were struggling to get by on government schemes. The report found that billionaires had mostly benefited from betting on the recovery of global stock market prices when they were at their nadir during the global lockdowns in March and April. UBS said billionaires' wealth had hit a new high, surpassing the previous peak of 8.9 trillion reached at the end of 2017. The number of billionaires has also hit a new high, 2,189, up from 2,158 in 17. That must be America. The world? No, there's more. There was more. That's an increase of like 30 billionaires. That's just Britain on its own, never mind the world. Don't know where that number comes from. So, yeah, so there's that. And then there's this other article, it was in the Morning Star. Something that we can all get our teeth into. Oil giants are taking motorists for a ride. Labour said today, as the average cost of filling a typical family car, you don't need to fucking tell us, mate. We're fucking doing it. Sometimes you do wonder who they think they're talking to. Figures from data firm Experian revealed that the average price of a litre of petrol in Britain's forecourts is $1.82. The average was $1.98 around here. It was an increase of 1.6. See, this is the bit that gets on my fucking dick, right? So, let's get this. So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he wants a 5p per litre cut in fuel duty implemented in March to have an impact on the pumps. Now, that will clearly just be absorbed. So, we've just demonstrated that these companies are making this cost of living crisis exponentially worse by their greed. Right? We've just demonstrated that. We've just showed that. We've proved that. Boris Johnson wants to cut fuel duty. Now, as taxes are used to pay for services. So he wants to cut it by 5p per litre. Now, what do you think is going to happen 10 minutes after he fucking cuts fuel duty by 5p? Seriously, what do you think is going to happen? Now, unless he institutes legislation to protect that cut, then it's just going to be absorbed by the fuel companies, right? Right? We've just proved that. But we've also proven that they won't introduce legislation. As the guy pointed, as the article, the previous article that I read out, the guy illustrates that the government has within its arsenal right now the ability to protect the public from, but it's a choice. They choose not to. So, a 5p per litre fuel duty cut. But I'm against it, I'll be honest with you, because I know where it's going to go. It's not going to end up back in my pocket, and it's also not enough. But Labour shadow, but this is where Labour are. So this is how fucking pathetic Labour are. This is their response. Labour shadow transport secretary Louise Haig tweeted, "Working people are facing savage price hikes, and this hapless government are too distracted to do anything about it. Across the country, oil giants are taking motorists for a ride, but ministers are too weak to stand up to them." Right. The AA have called for further 10p cut and introduced the introduction of a fuel price stabiliser, which would see the rate lowered when prices increase. So the way that works is, as the prices increase, the duty comes down. So then that works as a scale, and it keeps the price steady. Enough is enough, and the fuel price stabiliser has been used in the past. So, if I'm not mistaken, last article. This is also, we're nearly done. It's very short. It's just one from the Morning Star, and it's an opinion piece. Real union leader Mick Lynch has a simple story to tell. Actually, before, I think we deserve another Mick video. Let's do this one. Mick on Piers Morgan. This is fucking shit.
What I believe is your Facebook page. I want you to confirm or deny if this is your Facebook page. It's a picture of the hood from Thunderbirds.
Can you see the likeness?
Well, I'm just wondering where the comparison goes, because he was obviously an evil, criminal, terrorist mastermind, described as the world's most dangerous man who wreaked utter carnage and havoc on the public.
Is that the level you're pitching this at, Piers? That is a joke amongst me and my friends, and you can see the likeness, if you like.
So you're not denying that you are comparing yourself to the hood?
I'm not comparing myself to anyone. I'm me.
You've literally made your profile picture the hood. And I'm simply saying, I was a massive...
What? If it was a bunch of
flowers,
Thunderbirds
fan, and the hood was the most dangerous, evil person in the world.
He's the most evil puppet made out of vinyl in the world. Is that the level your journalism's at these days?
I simply asked you if that was you and your Facebook page.
Well, do you think I look like the most evil person in the world, Piers?
Well, now you're asking me to answer a difficult question, Mick. I don't know you that well. All I'm saying is, you have personally... I think I'm the most evil person in the world. I think I'm a working-class bloke who's leading a trade union in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. I understand. If you don't want to be compared to the hood, probably better not to have the hood as your profile picture.
I think it's quite funny.
So do I. But I also like... As I was a Thunderbirds fan...
Is that the level we're at, though? Don't you want to talk about the issues rather than a little vinyl puppet from the 1960s?
I'm simply trying to get inside the mindset of the man about to wreak havoc on the country. It makes me laugh, honestly, that you have the hood as your profile pic, because that's a man who wreaked havoc on the world.
Well, it makes me laugh that your level of journalism has descended so far that you can't think of any other question rather than a thing about the Thunderbirds.
I didn't put that picture on your profile page.
Yeah, but you've chosen to spend 2 or 3 minutes of this interview talking about an irrelevant.
Because you seem so irritated by the comparison. Well, because you seem so irritated by the comparison to the hood.
I'm not irritated at all. I'm completely...
You seem very irritated.
Well, I'm not.
You're not? This is your non-irritated phase, is it?
What point are you trying to prove, Piers? I mean,
I'm not trying to prove anything. You put it on your Facebook page. I'm simply asking. It's an odd choice for a union boss who's about to go on a series of strikes to have that as your choice.
To say about...
That's fucking pathetic. That is genuinely pathetic. What the fuck was that all about? Like, absolutely. Piers Morgan's a fucking disaster. He really is. He's always a fucking disaster. But anyway, couple of comments on the YouTube here. Funny Demo says, funny how think tanks are, yes, absolutely, are often named opposite to what their interests and beliefs are. E.g. the far right hard Brexit EU flag shagger Tory faction calling themselves the European Research Group. I know, and it's like all those American. The American equivalents, the American think tanks, they all have these, American patriots and all this shit, and they're fucking pathetic. Exactly the same thing. I'm Liberty Group and all this sort of stuff, and They're about the exact opposite. They're about hard-right libertarian fucking lunacy. Tony Gervin, Habib is a cunt, he suggests. Habib is a cunt. Absolutely he is. He's stirring the shit here because he can't let the protocol work. It exposes Brexit for the shit show it is. That's exactly it. It's become quite clear that that's the only opposition really that the Tories have, and the ERG and fucking headbangers like Ben Habib have with the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the only interest that they have in Ireland is to get rid of that. Which would be a fucking disaster. I was listening today to a commentator talk about the impact that getting rid of the Northern Ireland Protocol would have on the dairy industry just here in the north, because we don't process our own dairy. It's processed down south. And, you know, that literally it would be a nuclear bomb in the dairy industry. It would be over. And you say, well, okay, well, that's if you're prepared like Jeffrey Donaldson to take the hit. The dairy industry in the north of Ireland is fucking massive. There are more cows in the north of Ireland than there are people. There are 300,000 dairy cows in the north of Ireland. It's one dairy cow for every 6 people. And then don't get started into the beef industry. And you know that they're not going to build the facilities that you need to process the products of that industry, because they didn't do it with in Britain. So the seafood industries and all these sorts of things that they knew they were going to have to. The commentator that I was listening to today was talking about the mollusk industry, the bivalve mollusk industry. You've got 3. It's boring, but you get 3 different categories of bivalve, and they're categorized as A, B, and C. A, they can be shipped, straight to Europe, straight to for consumption by humans. B means that they need to be purified first, and then C means they're not fit to be consumed by humans. All bivalve mollusks in Britain are B category because the water's so dirty. So they need to be purified first. So because of Brexit, and there wasn't anything, so they didn't build the tanks, and they never put in place the legislation to allow them to build the tanks and then do the export, because they wanted to go for the hardest Brexit possible, which is more or less what they got. So now the British industries, what they do, the fishermen, they dock in Europe, they dock in Denmark, they dock in Holland, they dock somewhere else. The mollusks are taken off and then they're purified in Europe, and what that means is then that the exchequer doesn't get any of the benefit of that, and the people of Britain don't get any benefit. So then, if they're not going to do that for the people of Britain, they're certainly not going to do anything like it for us. It's fucking, definitely not. So back to the YouTube here. Demo says, Mick Lynch has had more of an impact on the incompetence and dishonesty of the Tories in a few days than Starmer has ever managed. And my God, isn't that fucking true? Isn't that true? Mick Lynch has had more of an impact on the incompetence and dishonesty of the Tories in a few days than Starmer has ever managed. Unbelievable. And then Starmer isn't even back in the fucking strike. He's going to have to fucking turn around on that one, because as far as I can tell, what do I know, but, just scanning the horizon as you see it, he's not, the people of Britain seem to be behind the strikes, and they're let down by Starmer's weakness and wateriness, weaselness on this. He's fucking awful. Demo says, funny how Ian Chucklebrother Paisley Sr. was happy to call the cows up north Irish during the foot and mouth crisis. Absolutely, he fucking was. Wisely too. It's hard to believe you're going to say, if he had been around, this wouldn't have been going on. Nigel Farage isn't hanging out with the fishermen and mollusk men these days, post-Brexit day. Isn't funny that? Absolutely. Nigel Farage isn't hanging out with the fishermen and mollusk men these post-Brexit days. Funny that. You couldn't get him away from a fucking fishing boat during the campaign. Fucking louse. Oh, drives you nuts. Let's do one more Mick. Let's do another Mick. I've got Mick versus Jonathan Tory. Jonathan couldn't figure out who he was. Some fucking Tory backbencher. Check this out. I literally downloaded 10 of these fucking things, so I'm going to get them all into this podcast. So here we go.
That 3% is a very good offer on the table with modernisation. But you've heard, even now, Network Rail are moving to a position where they're saying we will go above 3% with modernisation. And Mick's talking about, modernisation is a scary thing. Modernisation such as installing an app on your phone so you can communicate better with your workers, or having sensors on trains to detect deficiencies in the rail network, I don't think are controversial things. I think they're good things because they means that drivers are safer, and ultimately, people on the rail line as well are safer. And that's what we want to see, the best health and safety we can. And what Mick's doing is undermining the rail network. We know passenger numbers are down by about 20% to pre-pandemic levels. We are in a world where we want to get to a place where we have net zero. That means encouraging more people onto public transport. These strikes are only going to drive people further away from it. And the pay rise that Mick wants will therefore just add more cost to the rail network, making it more unaffordable for more working people. He should be apologising to the doctors and nurses who can't get to hospital, the patients who can't get their operation, the kids who will miss out on their education today, but also those armed forces veterans who risk their lives for our freedoms, who won't be able to celebrate Armed Forces Day on Saturday.
Do you want to apologise for all that, Mick?
Well, I think Jonathan should apologise for talking nonsense. None of that is true. We have got automated technology on trains. We've got pantograph cameras. We've got ultrasonic sensors. We've got things that detect faults on tracks. That is all rubbish. I negotiated that deal with Network Rail myself. We've got on-train technicians, all sorts of new technology that is being deployed. So that is just stuff that's written in Conservative Central Office for backbench MPs to spout along with their ministers.
Mick. Okay, so no sorry to
I
veterans.
don't want this disruption. I don't want people to be inconvenienced, and I want a settlement to this dispute. I can't do that with a backbench MP who's just learned it off a script.
Well, hang on. Let him respond to that. Let me respond.
That 3% is a very good offer on the table with modernisation.
So he's just cutting straight to the point. Damo nailed it earlier on. Where's the comment? Straight talking, calling out lies and nonsense rather than engaging in plainly false narratives has definitely struck a chord with so many people. Mick for El Presidente. Haha. Right, we'll go for one more Mick video. Then I'm going to finish on this wee article here. It's a very quick one. And then we're going to hit you with the Mick Lynch supercut. Let's do this.
You've said that. The head of the let me finish the point. Hang on, let me finish the point. The head of the rail delivery group this morning on the Today programme said that he didn't want the government in the negotiation. We've made money available to the railway industry. It's up to the employers to negotiate with the trade unions. And what happened this afternoon was halfway through these negotiations, while they were ongoing, the unions came out onto the street and gave an impromptu press conference, I mean, TV footage, saying that the strike was going to continue.
OK, let's just pause. Hang on.
I mean, it's on video.
Now, Mick Lynch, excuse me. Mick Lynch, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. Would you be prepared to negotiate with the Tory government, yes or no?
Absolutely. I've met every Tory transport minister in the last year. Bus, rail, maritime and the Secretary of State. We've never said we won't meet the Tories. What we said was that they're not at the table. I'm negotiating with the employers. You've also lied that we left negotiations on Saturday and went to a rally. There were no negotiations scheduled for Saturday. You are a liar.
Right, let's just hang on. There's a video of him walking out this afternoon giving a press conference. It's on videotape.
And then we went back to the talks.
Yeah, having said the strike's going to go ahead.
You are a liar.
OK, well, let's
just... the strikes were going to go ahead.
And you're a liar.
Let's
just video.
You're a liar. We were back at the talks this afternoon. We've just left them. And your Network Rail managers delivered statutory redundancy notices to us.
Chris Phillips, let's just talk about the high wage...
There we go. Wow. It is stunning how he's managed to cut through. It really is absolutely stunning. So... this little love letter to Mick Lynch, which is this live broadcast. So let's get to the last little part of it here. And that's what this is. I've just been so taken with this guy. I know I'm probably going to end up disappointed, because you always do, don't you? And politicians are... well, not that he's a politician, to be fair. But I'm long enough in the tooth, and I've been let down that many times that I'm not going to put too much faith in anybody going forward, but I am just going to take the joy, sheer joy of watching him eviscerate these fucking goblins. Real Union leader, this is from the Morning Star. Real Union leader Mick Lynch has a simple story to tell, and he tells it with a disarming frankness that has left a half a dozen media personalities and Tory politicians wondering why they cannot lay a glove on him. So true. Railway bosses are paid millions in salaries and fringe benefits, and the private owners of train operating companies have plundered millions in profits on the backs of railway workers whose wages are increasingly unable to meet living costs. These things are transparently true, and the combined efforts of the government and the monopoly media are unable to significantly shift the common sense understanding of the British people that railway workers need a pay rise that offsets the murderous rise in living costs that has followed on a decade of pay restraint. In this, the British public, in its working class majority, senses that a victory for the RMT will strengthen their own prospects of a pay rise. Lynch makes the compelling point that railway workers are created by the work of railway workers. Challenged to deny he is a Marxist, the RMT leader laughed off the question, and in doing so wrong-footed his interlocutor that the swollen-headed presenter will approach future encounters with trade union leaders with great caution. Do I have that one? I do. Oh, I didn't load it. I'll have a wee look for that. With Richard Madeley. Oh my God, what a dick. By the way, what the fuck is wrong with being a Marxist? What is wrong with being a Marxist? Why is the accusatory way that Madeley, are you a Marxist? So what if he was? And then Madeley's definition of what a Marxist is quite clearly, he's a fucking day one politics student has a fucking deeper understanding. Okay. Lynch has rewritten the trade union communications manual by the simple expedient of telling it straight. This is what you said, Demo. Knowing his facts in detail and presenting them with compelling force and good humour. He also handed down a lesson to communicators of a Marxist disposition to keep it simple, tell it straight, and stay on message to the millions of working people whose real life experiences make them question the way Britain is run and are looking for answers to the questions which this fast developing crisis of capitalism presents. And I'm going to highlight that. He also handed down a lesson to communicators of a Marxist disposition to keep it simple, tell it straight, stay on message to the millions of working people whose real life experiences make them question the way Britain is run. Keep it simple. Us leftists and us socialists and students of the game, we don't keep it simple, and we spend too much time fucking arguing with each other as well. But we need to keep it simple. Working class voices are so rarely heard on mass media that the RMT leaders' round of media appearances are already the stuff of legend, hence this podcast. And they feature in a host of viral social media posts, while a compilation... Sorry, I mangled that whole fucking paragraph. I'm going to go again. Working class voices are so rarely heard on the mass media that the RMT's leaders' round of media appearances are already the stuff of legend and feature in a host of viral social media posts, while a compilation of his interviews is trending. We can expect a renewed employer and government offensive drive home the ruling class messages that this capitalist crisis must be solved at the expense of workers' living standards. Since the 2008 capitalist crisis, workers in Britain have been locked in a system of static wages. The nonsensical notion that it is workers' irresponsible wage claims that fuel inflation cannot explain a present-day inflation rate of 11%. In the same moment that a Cabinet Office Minister proposes to strip controls on city executive pay as a deregulatory measure To reduce the overall burden on businesses, the government proposes both limits on public sector pay and a general pay restraint across the entire economy. Here is the hypocrisy of government ministers exposed. Pay restraint for bosses is a burden on business, but so are pay rises for workers. One rule for the rich and another rule for the rest of us. There are any number of pay disputes in the offing. The government and employers are increasingly clear in insisting that pay settlements must be below the rate of inflation. And I am, by the way, just personally, I got a job recently, last year. I got a pay raise of 2%. And the fucking union turned up looking a round of applause. I told them to go fuck themselves. So, in holding to this line, they will deploy the full range of measures available. Expect heightened media offensive. Prepare for the innumerable red scare stories. Anticipate intensified police action around picket lines. Plan for a lawfare offensive designed to enmesh workers and workers' leaders in a legal nightmare. Already, there is a bid to set workers in pay disputes against pensioners. This is time for clear heads and unity. So we're going to get crucified here. Us leftists and the strikers are going to... The usual stuff's going to happen. We have to be aware of this. We have to be alert to what's going to happen. If the writer of this article is correct, which is... it doesn't say it, but if he is correct, already there is a bid to set workers in pay disputes against pensioners. So what I think that means is a lot of hedge funds, pension funds, etc., buy shares in the privatised industries of the UK. Famously, the German rail industry is a big owner of the British, formerly British Rail. And they use the profits that they make from the British people to pay the pensions of the German rail workers. So, there we go. So, that's that. That's a good article. I like that one. We're going to finish. I'm going to finish. Thanks for joining me on the YouTube. If you did. If you listened to this on your podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Don't forget you can support the podcast over on Patreon. It's only £3 a month, one tier. That's it. You get all the stuff. I've got a podcast. I've got 2 podcasts sitting in the can ready to go. So I'm going to drop those onto Patreon. One of them is an interview with my friend Richie McGee. We have a real great conversation about coaching and football and grassroots stuff. It's great. Richie's one of the best guys ever. So it's ready to go. I'll be dropping it this week. It'll be going out in Patreon for a while before I throw it out into the world. And there's another one up there. I got a lot of good feedback from the podcast with Phil Woolsey from Joyrider. Phil's a great guy, and you seem to like it. You seem to like him and enjoy his stories, which I know I definitely enjoy hearing. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I appreciate it. As I said, like, share, subscribe, do the thing. And I'm going to leave you with a class Mick video playing over the theme tune there. Just last couple of mentions on the YouTube. Demo says, class Tony, mumble, veterans, rhubarb, veterans. Yeah, Tony Gervin, Demo, Blair Americanized the whole veteran thing. Thank you for your service thing after the 9/11 invasions to cover up for the absolute shame of the screen. Yeah. Demo, shameless Tory backbencher lamenting teachers, doctors, and nurses, and can't get to their work but due to strikes, but won't give them a pay rise either. I know it's unbelievable. It is a part of the unbearable hypocrisy of the whole thing, and it is rather unbearable. Guys, thanks so much. I really fucking appreciate you hanging in with me tonight. I'm still getting this sort of bitrate warning on the screen. I don't know what to do about it. I think I figured it out during the course of this podcast. While I was playing those videos, I was showing you, I was getting dug into the settings in my software. But I was paying attention. So here we go. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and I don't know, maybe we'll do something at the weekend. We'll see how we get on. Okay, toodle pip.
We've got people who are doing full-time jobs who are having to take state benefits and use food banks. That is a national disgrace.
What will they do if agency workers try to cross those picket lines?
Well, we will picket them. What do you think we'll do? We run a picket line and we'll ask them not to go to work. Direct lie.
If you are a Marxist, then you're into revolution and into bringing down capitalism. So are you or aren't you?
Richard, you do come up with the most remarkable twaddle sometimes.
That's the unions don't tell me who I am and whether or not I'm working class or whatever, any of those sorts of things.
You weren't working class. I don't even know your name.
Onto the street. You can see what picketing involves. I can't believe this line of questioning. Picketing is standing outside the workplace to try and encourage people who want to go to work not to go to work. What else do you think it involves?
You've also lied that we left negotiations on Saturday and went to a rally. There were no negotiations scheduled for Saturday. You are a liar.
The pensions of our members are going to be decimated. They're going to make us poorer not only while we're at work, but poorer in retirement. And that's an agenda that the government has got because they want to subsidise the private sector in this country, as they are doing in the health service, which is being consumed by the private sector, as they've done in the education service, which is being consumed by the private sector.
He should be apologising to the doctors and nurses who can't get to hospital, the patients who can't get their operation, the kids who will miss out on their education today, but also those armed forces veterans who risk their lives for our freedoms, who won't be able to celebrate Armed Forces Day on Saturday.
Do you want to apologise for all that, Mick?
Well, I think Jonathan should apologise for talking nonsense. None of that is true.
And you're a liar.
What the rest of the country suffers from is the lack of power, the lack of the ability to organise, and the lack of the wherewithal to take on these employers that are continually driving down wages and making the working class in this country poorer year on year on year, while the rich get richer.
I welcome anyone that wants to join us on our picket lines and show us messages of support.
All right, well,
if Keir Starmer can't do that, that's a problem for him, not for us. I don't want people to be inconvenienced, and I want a settlement to this dispute. I can't do that with a backbench MP who's just learnt it off a script. And one of the reasons we're not affiliated is because Labour politicians since Blair have not identified with working class people. And failing to do that is one of the problems they've got in working class communities, and they've left the door open to populists and others to come into the situation. The Labour Party is about supporting working people, or it should be, not triangulating from opinion makers such as the Daily Mail and the Telegraph and the Times. So they've got to sort out their identity, and they've got to come up with a set of policies.
There are lower paid people and there are wealthy people in this society. And what's wrong in this society is that there is an imbalance between the people that do the work to keep this country going, who create the wealth of our civilisation and don't get a fair share of that wealth because it's going to people who are vastly wealthy. Labour should be comfortable with backing working class people who are struggling, and one of the ways that they can redress the imbalance is through industrial action where negotiations fail. What else are we to do? Are we to plead? Are we to beg? We want to bargain for our futures. We want to negotiate. And if we're not bargaining, you have to beg. And I don't want any working class people in this country to have to beg the employers for a decent living. And Keir Starmer shouldn't want that either.